What's up, Tigers, and welcome to this Mindset Masterclass where you're going to learn how to forget your stress by focusing on yourself with advice from Game of Thrones superstar Kit Harington, aka Jon Snow. And you're also going to learn how it is okay to ask for help if you ever feel like you need it, just like Kit did when he went to check himself into rehab to help deal with his stress from Game of Thrones and dealing with his critics. So let's do it, let's get into it. Kit Harington is an English actor who portrays Jon Snow in the award-winning, record-breaking series Game of Thrones. But it was not all roses for Kit Harington, as he actually got checked into rehab towards the end of the series, basically because of people talking hate on him, and he had bad self-image, neuroticism and stress issues from all this. So if Kit Harington, one of the most talented, successful and handsome actors in Hollywood, can actually go to therapy for what these people are saying for him and have these bad self-image issues, then I'm pretty sure it's okay for all of us mortals to feel the same way about ourselves at times. Kit struggled with critics basically saying that he is boring, and this boring idea, as he admits himself, got stuck in his head and basically snowballed until it became this huge gargantuan force in his head. And this just shows how powerful thoughts can be when one of them roots in your head, and basically you have a confirmation bias where you basically funnel all evidence that you see in the world, however true or untrue as it is in most cases, towards this belief. So you go from basically, I'm not boring, to, am I boring, to, holy crap, I am boring, as Kit did in this instance, and it really turns into this huge force in your head that just drives you crazy long term and leads to huge stress like it did with Kit. Kit Harington is a bit of a perfectionist, which we can see in the interview where he describes that he's still not happy with 70% of the scenes that he did in Game of Thrones. And for anyone who's watched Game of Thrones, Kit Harington is phenomenal in the series, which is why he won an Emmy for it in season 6. But he's since said he has come to peace with it. But perfectionism, while it's great to strive for, it can be super dangerous because you're never going to achieve that, and until you come to grips with it as a goal rather than you trying to achieve this reality, you're truly not going to be happy going forward. Perfect can be a nice goal to aim for, but it can never truly be something you'll ever achieve. Think of all the boys and girls out there who suffer with eating disorders, who try to achieve this perfect body that's flaunted to them in front of the media. And the reason why we as a society we're so obsessed with this perfect image is because it's flaunted in front of us every day. And the reason because of this is so many companies make tons of money off of striving for this perfect image, from weight loss products, shampoos, conditioners, makeup, you name it. All of us strive for this perfect image because it makes these companies so much freaking money. But at the end of the day, you're never going to achieve that perfect image. And what people think they will feel when they have this perfect image is not actually what they truly want. What you truly want deep down is just to be at peace with yourself. And you think by being perfect you'll get this, but in reality what you want is just be at peace with yourself and who you are as a person. Being at peace with yourself is something Kit learned the hard way by actually going to a wellness retreat or rehab, whatever you want to call it. And now he says, looking back, that he's actually happy and at peace with the shots he took. Maybe he's not perfectly happy with 70% of them, but he's realized how important it is to come to peace with what you did and realize that you're never going to be perfect. So a lot of us, we don't have the comfort of being able to go into a rehab center or get treatment, say like Kit did, for us not being happy with ourselves. But what the important thing to do, like Kit is, where he just got away from the real world and got away from things that were going crazy in his head, is just to get some perspective on things. And you can do whatever you can to get perspective on things, whether it's asking a friend you trust whether your thoughts are just crazy thoughts or whether the reality, whether in most circumstances are actually just crazy thoughts. So your friends, your true friends, can give you a perspective on that. Or you can actually just take a step back, whether it's just go out into the country, go for a long ass walk and get perspective on where you are, because in reality there's a lot of things you can be at peace with yourself right now. In the US, there's one person every 59 seconds that kills himself, or 49, but something crazy like that. So just the fact that you're here today, that is something to be proud of. It took Kit until he won an Emmy, which is basically like winning an Oscar but for a TV series, in season 6 to realize that he actually is fucking good. Now, for someone like Kit, who, when we watched through objectively and as fans of the Game of Thrones series, we realize he is fucking amazing. Even the 5 seasons before that. But it just shows you how powerful thoughts can be, where this boring idea got stuck in his head from the first season, and it rooted so deeply that it took an Emmy, like the equivalent of an Oscar or winning a Grammy, to really unroot that idea in his head, and for him to let go of this idea that he's boring, and to actually admit, I am a fucking good actor. This boring idea in his head also began to gather momentum when Kit moved from one of the lesser main characters, if that's the right way to say it, in the show, to actually one of the main characters, if not the main character in the show. And this boring idea then just began to explode in his head, and he became more neurotic on himself, and this whole idea just began to spiral in his head, and he was thinking, God, I don't know if I am boring, I'm the focus of this show. So it just created this vacuum in his head of uncertainty and stress for Kit. At this time when Kit was struggling, he found it very difficult because he was basically told by people, you should be so grateful because you're this big successful actor, and you shouldn't feel bad, that you are entitled to feel grateful for everything you have. And deep down he felt vulnerable, and this was hard for Kit because he couldn't just admit how he was feeling, that he was feeling crappy and vulnerable with all these insecurities. He was instead told, you have to feel this way and you don't feel any way otherwise. And this is something a lot of us can go through in our lives, where say you got a good job after college, or you went to college, or you went to a good high school, and you're struggling deep down with other issues that are going on, like maybe you hate your school, maybe you hate your college, but people are like, no, you have to feel grateful. But deep down you're struggling. This creates this huge internal conflict where you're told to portray this life, but the one you want to live is all the way over here. And this can really screw with us on the inside and just create this huge internal turmoil that Kit himself actually felt. Leaving behind Game of Thrones was a hugely traumatic experience for Kit. He describes it like shedding his skin. You can see in footage of him just how deeply emotional it was, leaving this huge part of his identity behind. And this is something that Kit hugely struggled with, because you're Jon Snow, that's you, that's your identity. So when you leave that part of you, or you, behind for some people, you just realize there's this huge hole in you for your ego and for your identity, that you don't know what you are anymore. This was you, and now you're just like, what the fuck do I do now? And this is a struggle that a lot of us go through in different stages in our lives. Say when you're in high school, if you're known as the football guy or the band guy, and you have your community, and you leave and suddenly you lose your identity, and you're like, what am I? Who am I anymore? And this happens in college. It can happen in a job of yours, and it's a struggle of identity that a lot of us go through in life. And it's not talked about in society today, that when you leave behind this identity, how do you find your new identity? And that causes a huge struggle within a lot of us, because nobody talks about it. We don't know what to do when you're suddenly not the college footballer, when you're suddenly not the big shot at your job. What are you then, and who are you then? When you're at a place where you're struggling with your identity, as Kit was, it can be so helpful to have a friend or friends around you who you trust. For John, it was John Bradley, who plays Samwell Tarly, and Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys, Mother of Dragons. It can just be a huge help to have people like this, to just, as Kit describes when he was over in Iceland with John Bradley, to just be uncomfortable and vulnerable with, and just admit what you're struggling with. And having your friends with you can be a huge help, because all these crazy thoughts in your head, say Kit having these neurotic thoughts about him being boring, your close friends like Emilia or John for John Bradley, for Jon Snow, or Kit Harington, they can just dispel this notion because you trust them. And once you trust their thoughts, you can start to actually look at the thoughts in your head and go like, what the fuck, you're an absolute bullshitter basically. But sometimes you need that objective person who you trust or who you love in cases to just take a step back and go, okay, these thoughts are not true and this is not truly who I am. Kit is now at a place where he doesn't feel the need to read reviews for validation or self-validation. So back in his early career, he read reviews to just obviously improve on himself and keep improving. But Kit has gotten to a place now where he realizes he doesn't need reviews to make him happy. You can keep chasing all those reviews or those perfect performances or perfect ratings, but they're never going to give you actual happiness and actual peace with yourself, which is taking Kit a long time to get to that place where if you're always looking for external sources for happiness and for self-validation of yourself, you're honestly chasing a dragon that you're never going to catch. And until you take a step, take a breather and realize, okay, I've got to start praising myself if I want to truly be happy and accepting myself, you're never going to get to that place. And what you're trying to get to is that place of just being at peace and happy with yourself. And to do that, you really got to shun a lot of the outside world and influences and take time to really reflect on yourself and look at yourself and look how far you've come. Because if you're actually alive today, that is a fucking plus. And if you're just watching a video like this on YouTube, you're better than a huge majority of the planet. So that in itself is a starting point to actually just starting, okay, I have a lot to be grateful for and a lot to be proud of. If you want happiness or peace with yourself like Kit has, you have to start by being a good boss to yourself. So being a good boss to yourself, think of a boss if you've ever had one, or say a teacher who you really admired or respected. And a lot of the time it'll have the same traits, like they respected you, they treated you well, they pushed you, they motivated you, they were a good friend to you. Now ask yourself, are you a good boss to yourself? Do you push yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Do you love yourself? Are you a good friend to yourself? And most of the time you're going to be like, no, I'm a terrible boss to myself. I'm mean to myself. I'm degrading myself. I'm not a nice person to myself. Like, would you want to work for that kind of person? Hell no. And that's coming from me, because I'm personally like that as well. So to actually become kind and at peace with yourself, you have to start being a good boss to yourself. And one way I've started doing this is through a thing called Proud Points, which I randomly just came up with the other day. Instead of gratitude, what I'm doing is I'm writing down a few things every day. It can be super minor or big or whatever, like points that you're proud of yourself of. Like, I'm proud that I went to the gym today. I am proud that I ate a healthy meal today. I am proud that I held the door open for that person. I'm proud that I was a kind person to such and such today. And when you do that, you realize that, yeah, they might seem minor, but you have a lot to be proud of yourself for. And every day you're even just alive and breathing, you can be proud of yourself for. So find the little things to be proud of yourself for. So look, if Kit Harington, of all people, superstar actor, can have these bad self-image issues and be a bad boss to himself, you too can be a bad boss to yourself. But it's never too late to turn it around and start being a good boss to yourself. So please be a good boss to me and boss that like button, boss that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.